worth it. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the Westernized Buddhism. Okay, before I start, then I just like to make it clear about Buddhism, because Buddhism is not one religion or one school. There's many schools. So it starts from India and then get popular in China, and then from China to Korea to Japan to Southeast Asia and Vietnam, and then they have another route going from the south and go to the Cambodia, Thailand, and they all complicate, and then also travel to West. And since Buddhism has no central governance, there's unlike a Christian, or there's no systematic writing, and so it becomes every time you go to different place, adapt to the local need or local culture. So it's become very different in different ways. So it's meaningful to study different Buddhism. So whenever you learn from Buddhism, actually it's only to represent the local. Okay. So today we are going to focus on what happened in the West. Okay. Mainly we talk about America. So if you know Buddhism, go to China, become different. Go to Korean, go to Japan, they all have a different flavor. And when they come to America, the difference become much bigger. So Sarah, you have your hands up?
Yeah, so I just had a question. So you mentioned that there's no systemized method for Buddhism. Is there, so there's no sacred, or in other words, sacred book that the Buddhists refer to? Or is it more of several writings that there's no one book like the Bible, the Torah, the etc.? Is there any book like that for Buddhism?
No. Okay, so that's my answer. No. Okay, so I truly believe it's no. Okay, if somebody tell you yes, then please ask that person. That's my opinion. I will say no. And if you were not here, but like 2 months ago, I introduced a very short writing called Heart Sutra. Okay, that's only have 270 characters in Chinese, or equivalently 270 something English word, and we read that in detail. So that's the one I will not consider the canon or the holy Sanskrit, but that's, in my point of view, is the most recited, okay, sutra. Okay, if you, Sarah, if you are interested, you can go to the YouTube or to search for Heart Sutra. That's very short, and but again, that's not the standard or whatever. They have many different translations, so you can look at get a flavor on that. But and Lotus Sutra, that's also another one. A lot of people read it, but again, that's what I'm talking about is based on my understanding, and which is more on the Mahayana. Okay, so they have a different thing. So before we start, and then I know people have a very different background about the Buddhism, and some probably already practice for many years, and some probably very new on that. So I just get a quick overview on the Buddhism. So basics, we can roughly talk about, they have 3 schools, okay, which I'm talking about mostly because I'm from Taiwan, mostly Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, so basics is popular in China, Japan, Korean, and Taiwan, all these places. That's all so-called Mahayana. But the original, the Gautama Buddha teaching, is being considered as a school of elders, which is Theravada. Okay. Theravada in some translation as Hinayana. But I don't see that's a proper translation. That means small vehicle, and nobody want to be called small. So that's a kind of wrong name. So the proper name should be Theravada. So that should be the original teaching. So I will look at like Theravada is like Judaism, and the Mahayana like a New Testament, okay, a kind of new revolution. And sometimes we separate another one called Diamond Vehicle, or so-called Vajrayana, which is popular in so-called Tantric Buddhism, which is in Tibet. Okay, so today we will talk about a little bit because Dalai Lama is from this area. So you will see how different in the school and in the Buddhism school, and then when each of these one come to America, okay, they all take a different form. So we will see, I think if you read today's paper, and I think this paper doing a pretty good job to give an overview about what's happening in Buddhism's influence in America. We can take a non-religious point of view. So that's kind of like ABC of the Buddhism. And then, of course, if you just like Sarah asked, they have the central something, central teaching. Basically, we can call it the Four Noble Truths. Okay, so that's kind of the original teaching, talk about the suffering, okay, which is dukkha. Okay, so the word is suffering, and the why karma and how does the everything happen, okay, and what's the purpose is nirvana. Okay, we need to stop this the samsara, okay, which is reincarnation. You are reborn and reborn, and they have a different way to a noble path, okay, to teach you. So that's all the fundamental, but since it moved to different place, this kind of fundamental teaching just sitting in the background and is not, being taught too much. And this one, especially in the Westernized Buddhism, probably not talking about this at all. So, Pin, please.
I have a follow-up question to Sarah's question. So it is true that there's not one sutra that's considered sacred above all, but are there particular schools of Buddhism that consider a particular sutra to be most important or sacred? Because, for example, in China, there are all these different branches, Zen Buddhism being one of them. And there's like Tiantai Zong, Wei Shi Zong, Jingtu Zong. So are there particular ones, a particular sect that might hold a particular sutra as the sacred one?
Yeah, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Okay, but for example, like Lotus Sutra, okay, that's I think there's Tiantai or something they focus on, and the different school have a different focus on that. And but Lotus Sutra basics is also being read for many different schools. It's complex. Before I thought I know everything, but when I get into it, then I find out, okay, I'm not going. Before I'm thinking about, I think that when I first time try to introduce Buddhism in this meetup, I try to like draw a chart of different school, and then I start to deep in and I find out, spend hours, I still looking for different information. So it's complex. So I draw the conclusion is every single Buddhism teaching is serve as introduction. So when you listen to a lecture about Buddhism teaching, when you walk out the classroom, okay, you are not graduate. You just finish the introduction, and the rest is your job. That's why every school, every temple, and they have the different kind of idea. So last time we talked about the first part, we talked about Socrates and the Zen, and then we talked about the koan, and I remember I prepared like 10 koan to talk. I only finished 5. Okay, so so I decided to reverse the order. Let's read this paper first, and then if we have time, we can go on the koan exercise. Rubena, please.
But in all of them, Buddha is worshipped?
Yeah, okay, that
I guess you could use worship as a context to appreciate the teachings from older ancestors. Like a lot of it is trial and error philosophy. So the key is to pass down the knowledge. So I guess worshiping is an okay word.
Yeah, I think we have Audrey want to answer the question. Audrey, please.
I never thought of it as worship. I find it interesting because one can worship the Buddha. I'm more interested in the philosophy and the practices that help you work with your mind and use the Buddha as, I guess, an inspiration. But you know, the aspects that you're trying to actually work with and cultivate in your own individual lives. But I can't remember, that wasn't was my question, that came later. So now I'm confused. Oh, I wanted to ask a question about Pali. Is that not considered one text for most sects, or am I wrong about that?
I have an answer on this. Okay, if you for the Theravada, okay, that's the original Buddhism teaching, which is in Pali. Okay, the language in Pali. Okay, so when we go to the Mahayana, okay, the language is Sanskrit. So you will see the two difference. And I think today I will introduce a little bit of both Theravada and Mahayana come to America. So their text is different. One is Pali, one is Sanskrit.
I see. So
yeah, and then if you look at the Dalai Lama, okay, which supposedly should be considered as Mahayana, but I think that's my own theory. It's so close to India and so close to the original Gautama Buddha's place. So right. I think it takes a lot of mystic, also take a lot of Theravada's thinking. So they focus a lot on meditation. So that's kind of mixed. So I would like to separate them as Vajrayana, but
okay,
a different way. Okay, thank you. We have Pins and Rubana. Pins, please.
Well, the question on worship, to me, it seems like Buddhism is kind of like Taoism in this way. There's like the intellectual, philosophical Buddhism, and there's the Buddhism for the masses. I mean, you go to Buddhist temples, you see, you know, especially the popular ones, people there mostly are worshiping, and I'm not quite sure how much they're really thinking about the Buddhist philosophy. They're, you know, many of them are there to pray for good luck, pray for fertility.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait to hear about each of these schools. Are we going to go over those? As to what makes up Buddhism and like what are the founding principles? And I'm excited to dive into that.
Yeah. Wait. Let Pin finish. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. So anyway, that's all I wanted to comment on. It's kind of a complicated question. You know, depends on which what aspect of Buddhism you're really asking about. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Pin. That's a good point because because we are in the self-select group, right? So we are more in the philosophical focus. So sometimes I go to different group in the Sunday morning in New York. They have a lot of Buddhism group. They are not worshiping, but they do a lot of practice. Okay, so they will different. You will see the different focus. Okay, I also go with them to read the sutra, and sometimes they invite the master to give us a talk. So I listen to that, and that's a different thing. Okay, and then if you go to, let's say, Taiwan, okay, that's a Buddhist temple, and they are doing worship, and they have a different purpose. Okay, so I think the focus on worship is so-called the Pure Land. Okay, so the Pure Land is doing more worship. So it's, you know, very different. And then quickly answer Rubana's question. Okay, the answer could be no, or to introduce all the Buddhism school, because that's so many. Okay, that's so many, and everyone I introduce, and everyone can find the one to refute what I said. So at least I'm not going to do it. And if somebody said,
I hope we're gonna address what Buddhism is. Is that part of the agenda?
Okay,
And
I think.
what makes up Buddhism?
Okay, Rubana, let me ask you this. I think that will be as difficult as I try to understand Muslim, okay, Islamic religion, okay. So over the time, and the same as Hinduism, okay, it's not easy, okay, because every religion we have has been practiced for over 1,000 years. It's no way for us to sit there and spend 2 hours, 5 hours, 20 hours, 100 hours, and they say, hi, I got it. So I will believe constantly join the meetup, and from time to time, you know, if you been seen many times, you will start to get the feeling what it is, you know. So that's my idea. And everybody are welcome to do your own research and your own reading. If you see something is interesting or some lecture you think is very helpful, please do send a message to me, and then I will try to organize. And if you know somebody is good in talking about this, then I'm happy to bring the person in and then help us understand. That's the purpose. Okay, I assume we are done with, but anyway, today's